Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy. We are here today to conclude our reviews on the Austin Powers trilogy. We hope there'll be a fourth one at some point, but we're still waiting. We have done since 2002. We're, of course, talking about Austin Powers in Goldmember, which, as I mentioned, came out in 2002, directed once again by Jay Roach, starring all of the same people. Mike Myers playing four different characters in this one. And yeah, we're going to get into our review for this one. But before we do so, over to George with the socials.
Absolutely, guys. So this is the third one, as Chris mentioned, and we want to get your thoughts rounding off the trilogy. Don't you say no spoilers? It's been out for almost 20 years now. So let us know your thoughts on Goldmember, on this trilogy, some of your favorite characters, some of your favorite moments. Get them all going in the chat below. We'll reply to those, and of course, hit that subscribe button because the Austin Powers films may be over, the Ghostbusters films may be over, but we've got a couple more things that are coming up. We'll be speaking about at the end. There is another big trilogy coming, bigger trilogy than this, so we'll be getting into that. But as always, if you want to know what videos we've got coming up, when they're going to be up, the best way to do that is getting us on our social media. Twitter at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. And of course, we have a link to TeePublic in that description below. However, as we said, we're here to talk Austin Powers today. And as all three of these have started off, my memories are all hazed into one. So I'm going to hand over to Chris if you can remember the first time you saw this.
I do remember the first time that I saw this, and it was on home video. I was actually just checking the date that it came out. So apparently this was released on home video 3rd of December, I think it said 2002. So I would have been 9 years old, like a month away from turning 10. And yeah, I watched it on video. I went to my uncle's. I remember going to, I think it probably would have been Woolworths back in the day, if anyone remembers that store. I'd have picked the video up from there. It must have been like the opening day that the video came out, I'm assuming, or opening weekend that it was released, because I was already an Austin Powers fan at that time. I was eagerly anticipating this one. It was too old for me to see at the time, I believe, in the cinema, so I didn't get to it. And yeah, I remember watching it at my uncle's and remember not liking it as much as the other two, even from that early age. I knew that I didn't like this one as much as the other two. It did have some great bits in it, which I did find very funny. And again, Next Door Neighbor, I mentioned last time, who was a massive Austin Powers fan. This is one that we would go back to a lot and watch certainly a lot of key scenes from, mostly sort of like the Japan scenes with Fat Bastard and everything there, scenes that we'd often go back to quite a lot. So I think that's probably influenced my opinion now, in that I kind of stand by 9-year-old me's review at the time. It's my least favorite one of the three. That being said, it still does have some great moments and I still do enjoy it overall, but it is definitely the weakest one. But the thing that sticks out in my mind, and I can remember it as clear as day watching this for the first time, the intro really got me. So when the intro kicked off, and it's like the intense action music playing and the car chase and everything, turns around at the camera and it's Tom Cruise as Austin Powers. And I remember picking up the video box, looking at it. I'm like, well, no, it's Mike Myers. Like, why have they recast him? This is weird. And, like Kevin Spacey. Oh, God, that hasn't aged well in hindsight, has it? Kevin Spacey is Dr. Evil. Danny DeVito is Mini-Me. I remember being really confused. Like, 9-year-old me couldn't comprehend what was going on. I thought, have they recasted everyone? Why are they all on the poster if it's not in the film? Then obviously the twist comes in and it's all a film set, and I was on board with it from them. But they're like the main memories that I have of this film, certainly at the time.
Yeah, and I, growing up, I mean, I said they all hated it. I always remember Beyonce in this, and it's because I didn't know it was Beyonce. Obviously, you grow older, you realize Beyonce was that character from Goldmember, and I don't remember Michael Caine. I don't remember anything else really, bar probably for this one, Mini-Me, Beyonce, Fat Bastard, and Austin Powers, and Dr. Evil, the usual suspects, I guess you could say. And I think that's what was interesting rewatching these. Like, obviously, as I said, first time in like 10+ years. I don't remember Goldmember being the influence of the three because they all blended into one for me, the trilogy. But now I've sort of sat down. We spoke about last week. Is the first one's arguably better. The second one is funnier, and obviously it depends what you want out of a comedy. And the third one it's not bad. It's still very funny. It's got its moments. I think the first two are just on another level, and it's very hard, I think, to live up to that. And obviously, you look at the title of Goldmember. Obviously going. I mean, you've got some trivia. We'll bring that up in a sec. But when you think of Goldmember, obviously you're going to think of Goldfinger, and the character of Goldmember's, I don't want to say disappointing, but he's not really involved with it. Whereas you look at least the last film, it's obviously a character that's with him from the start to the end, and I feel like this film is missing something, but it's still very funny. I'm not going to take away from it, but I think the first two films are so obvious in what they're parodying from the Bond stuff. This one feels the most maybe formulaic Hollywood of all of them, and whether that's intentional with the whole fake film stuff at the start as well, I don't actually know.
Yeah, and going to the writing, I know I've mentioned other weeks where they're sort of using the same jokes from subsequent films and kind of retooling it a little bit. I don't know if you just get a kind of sense of that it feels a little bit tired at this point, because I don't know if it does. Because what year was Spy Who Shagged Me? I think that was.
99.
Was it not? See, it's not that. That's not a massive gap, is it, between the two?
No.
But I remember noticeably going, Mike Myers looks older in this one, and it feels slightly more tired than the other two. So I don't know if it was like the shtick was over at that point, come 2002. Because as I mentioned, there are still aspects about this film that I do like, and it still does get a good laugh out of me, especially in some certain key scenes. But I don't know if it was like the formula was kind of done by that point and there wasn't enough new stuff in the film. It was kind of still chasing off the coattails of what he was doing with International Man of Mystery. That being said, though, I think it did very well. I think it was very successful. Certainly that summer, it was the highest grossing comedy. I think it went up against, I think the two films it went up against was Planet of the Apes, the Tim Burton one, and oh wait, no, sorry. No, it beat the opening weekend, sorry, of Planet of the Apes, which came out the year before, but it did beat Rush Hour 2, which was the comedy film that it was going up against. Out of the two, I definitely prefer Rush Hour 2, just as like an aside. I think that's definitely a stronger comedy film than this one, but clearly for this one, there was still an audience there. There was people still showed up for the third Austin Powers film, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned those comedy sequels. Rush Hour was something I've been quite new to as well recently, and I think it's hard to take away how big these films would have been. I think, was it the last one I spoke about, the Hangover 2 quite a bit?
Yeah.
Hangover 3, I mean, I might be wrong and embarrass myself, but I don't remember Hangover 3 being a big success. I mean, it rounded off the trilogy, but it was the worst of the three. No one really cared for it, and it was one of them films that just got left away, and it's hard to group it with the others, because the second one was them doing a Hangover again. Whereas I think with this one, at least you're able to, at least, it's a spy parody of a franchise at 40 years old at this point in time, and I think there was a lot they could have done with it if they wanted to, but they went for some of that familiar territory. And you mentioned stuff like Mike Myers being older. You can tell there's been a few years, and even the humor feels a bit very contextual for 2002. Would you say? Not that it's a big deal for me, but you get all those cameos, right? And let's be honest, the Danny DeVito is fantastic. Kenneth Spacey one, it works. Whether that's good or bad now, I guess it works as Dr. Evil. Tom Cruise, fantastic. I love that kind of stuff. But it's when you got the dance scene, and I kind of said that my favorite scene of the first film is the dance scene, and it probably still is an absolute truth.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, we get the Britney Spears cameo.
Yeah.
And next to her, I guess that's topical now, she's free. Next to her, I don't know if you've watched How I Met Your Mother, but the main character from it is for some reason topless next to her. And this was way before he was famous, but that really took me out of it. And really random point, because I had to Google. I was like, is that the guy from How I Met Your Mother, like topless by Britney Spears? And it was. But there's something about this third one where I'm not saying the heart's not in it, but there's something in this film to me that doesn't work, and I can't pinpoint what that reason is, because I still enjoyed watching it. I'd laugh watching it, but I just wasn't invested in this.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Like the intro, like all the celebrity cameos that are just thrown in left, right, and center, and that's the thing, because like the other two did have celebrity cameos, but they didn't feel as forced or anything like that. But I know that it's trying to pass that off as a message that Austin Powers has almost become a brand, so he has got Hollywood behind him essentially. So yeah, it's like that unspoken thing. Like I know deep down this is the weakest one. I think it comes down to the writing, in all honesty, and maybe some of the characterizations. We'll go into some of the characters now. So Austin Powers probably gets a lot more to do in terms of his like overall emotional story in this, in that it's a father and son reconnecting kind of story in many ways as well for Dr. Evil, which. And this, maybe this is a bigger talking point when we actually start talking about Dr. Evil, but I'll throw it in now. The whole them being brothers and everything like that shocked me. I remember 9-year-old me kind of losing my mind at that revelation. That was like, I guess, the send up to Darth Vader, I am your father, I guess, for me at a young age. And which now, in hindsight, with Spectre and everything coming out, adds a whole new dynamic to it and still makes it kind of relevant with the whole Blofeld situation, to the point where, because I'd watched this as a kid and seeing that happen in Spectre, I think I mentioned this in the Spectre review, I thought that was just always a part of Bond canon. and like Austin Powers was just kind of mining that Bond canon there. I didn't realize that in many ways Spectre was influenced either intentionally or unintentionally by this moment in Austin Powers Goldmember of all things. So I don't know. I think for Austin Powers, like it, he's still got the funny moments in there. There are a lot of jokes that do land, and I think it's great. I think Mike Myers has actually gone on record saying that this is his favorite of the three Austin Powers films. So he doesn't match our review with it there. But I think for me, it's Doctor Evil that feels weaker. And I
He
don't know
looks
if it's
weird as
yeah,
well.
the appearance looks strange, and I don't. His eyes look blindingly blue, which I never remember that being a thing in the other ones. I think he did wear blue contacts, but there were some scenes where he did wear them and some scenes that he didn't. The makeup, I don't know if it's because Mike Myers is older or something, but yeah, something's off about him, and I don't know if that throws it off for me. The character of
The
Doctor
bold
Evil,
cap as well. The
yeah,
bold cap doesn't look right.
everything just looks slightly off. Like, Mike Myers as Austin Powers, fine, fat bastard. The makeup looks slightly different, but it's still distinctly fat bastard. That's fine. Goldmember's a new character. But yeah, Doctor Evil feels slightly out of place in this one to me.
Yeah, and I think that's where not that I struggle with it, but not just bringing Spectre into it. It's the Daniel Craig blue eye factor, and it's like these eyes are so blue in this film.
Yeah.
It's like if I missed something in the first two, and the whole like prison thing coming out of prison, the music
I
video
don't like that bit.
is as SNL as it's gonna get, and I think that's where you get that American humor. That's like you've done very well to do all humor, but when you do like parody music videos, it's so American.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I don't know, is that racist to say that probably any Americans can find it funny? I don't know, but it's one of those things with this where I was like, that isn't working. Like, it's not funny. And Mini Me in this film, like the whole he betrays him, he doesn't betray him, and you get all this weird Mini Me subplot. And I like the fact that Scott Evil is now suddenly actually evil all along. And I don't want to say they're trying to do too much. I just don't think it's hitting the way it has in the other films. Because what's happening is perfectly natural that he'd get bored of Mini-Me eventually, but then it's the awkward, everyone leave the room except everyone but Mini-Me, and it's like, pointing at the janitor and then the other guy and then the other guy and then the other guy, and it's like that humor just, it doesn't land on the second or third time, and then you're doing it again, and yeah, it's weird, and I'd even say, looking at sort of Spy Show, not to sort of hate this one because I did find this funny, the new characters they brought in the other films were very funny. Now, Michael Caine will get to, I think it's absolutely unreal, but Goldmember himself, he's just Dutch.
He's a gross character, isn't he? He's like just unpleasant.
Yeah, and like not to get everyone into it with Verstappen and all the crap with them lot, but it's like your sort of evil gimmick is that I mean, it's pretty revolting that he like peels skin off to like eat and keep and stuff, but he does a great Dutch accent, and I wonder why that's they took the character on. But the Goldmember, I was like, I wish you could have maybe parodied another Bond villain or tries to do something else, because I just don't think that worked.
Yeah, Goldmember, I remember as a kid, Dr. Evil loved, Austin Powers I loved, and Fat Bastard is easily probably my favorite thing in this film. That whole section there still gets a laugh out of me. But yeah, Goldmember never really did it for me. He's an unpleasant character. And again, don't get me wrong, there are some lines that I do find funny when he keeps like mentioning band names and songs under his breath. Like he's like, and that's the way, I like it, Casey and the Sunshine Band. Like, it's weird. It's weird, and the skin thing that does get a laugh out of me. I think that's just nostalgia there, because it is so gross and just weird and strange. But yeah, it doesn't hit the heights of the new characters that he added along the way, especially from the second one, not by a long shot. Should we talk about Michael Caine then? Nigel Powers, who is easily one of the best things in this film for me. Apparently, they were talking about getting Sean Connery to play his father. I'm glad they didn't. I don't think that would have worked. And to me, Michael Caine just nails it. That guy can do anything. He can do serious roles. He can do comedy roles. He can play it straight in a comedy, like Muppets Christmas Carol. I think that was one of his stipulations for doing that film, was like, I want to play it straight with all the craziness around me. But he's great in this. I think he's absolutely perfectly casted. And, the whole father-son dynamic as well does lead it to some funny scenes, especially the flashback scene, which is probably one of my favorite scenes, where they got the casting so spot on for like the younger versions of all these characters. And him not showing up, and they repeat that gag where everyone starts laughing in the crowd and like the empty seat. He's just likable, isn't he? He's like that Roger Moore-esque kind of thing. Like, he's old, he's probably past it, but he's still going to throw the one-liners in there and try and chirps the women.
Yeah, I can't believe that could have been Connery. That would have been awful.
Yeah,
Had that been
I'm glad they
Connery,
didn't do that.
too on the nose. Indiana Jones as well. The whole dad thing. What Mark Caine has, he's got that sort of charisma, and it's the whole. One of the funny scenes is when they're talking in like English dialect, basically,
Yeah.
and it's all this stuff. And I don't know why, but he just looks like him. And I think that's what scared me. It's like, I know he's got the hair for it and he does, but there's something about him naturally where Michael Caine looks like Mike Myers in this film. I don't know if that's a credit to makeup artists or if it's just a natural thing, but you want a big British name, and I don't think you want someone that's already been Bond. And I think Michael Caine, for the age you're looking for the time, you're not going to get anyone better that probably could have taken on Austin Powers' dad. And he's got the charm, and it's when he's with the women, and even remind of Indiana Jones when you've got the whole, when he not Indiana Jones, when
Well, she
Indiana
talks in
Jones
her
is
sleep. That
yeah,
bit.
that's it. And it's like, even like you've kind of have their own little version of it, and I just thought that Michael Caine was like the welcome addition. That I didn't enjoy Goldmember himself, but you bring in Michael Caine and was really fun. And also, it's another ally to bring into it, and I think that's where this one struggles. That, not to sort of segue into Beyonce, I didn't realize how young she was in this film. I will say that might be the reason. I don't think she's a bad acting in it. I think this was we're going to cast the name, not the character.
Yeah. Did she do a song for the film as well in the end credits? I
Probably.
can't remember if she did or not. I actually quite like Beyonce in this film. I actually haven't seen her act in any other films. I think, was it not Boogie Nights? Was she in?
I've
She was
seen her
in
in Pink
some.
Panther, Lion King, the new one.
Wasn't
If
she in a
that
film with
counts.
Eddie Murphy? Can't
She
remember
might.
it
She's
now.
done. Oh yes. I used to always get adverts for her on the Spider-Man 2 DVD.
Dream Girls, that's it. Dream Girls. I think she's meant to be quite good in that, but I haven't seen that film. I really like her in this. I like the whole kind of 70s blaxploitation kind of angle that you go with it, like "you're under arrest, sugar" kind of thing, which you get in those old style films. When she punches people, she's like "Shazam!" and she's like really sassy and everything. So I like her character. It's distinctly different, and again, it's repeating that whole kind of time travel aspect, or going to like a time, a famous decade. You had the 60s, you've done the flash forward to the 90s, let's go back to the 70s and
It's
get that whole kind of
pimp.
disco vibe to it.
It's the pimp. The pimp car. That's
Pimpmobile.
the time
Yeah.
machine as well.
Yeah.
That was a funny gag, and I say it's got bits that still make it very funny. But I think because of how good sort of Felicity Shagwell is, it's hard to come down from that to like. I don't think Beyonce's bad in it. I just think they've gone for like a name, how young she was as well. I can't imagine Beyonce taking on a role like that ever again. I know she did Pink Panther, but it was like once she got certified A-lister, it was kind of like she's going to be above a lot of that sort of comedy stuff. And I don't know. I like the Blackpool Station stuff, and I just think, I don't know. Is there something? Is it because of how good the previous film is? Because
I think that
I'm
could be, yeah.
approaching this from quite a fresh take that I've not seen these in so long. I'm going back to them and almost rediscovering them. And because they all blend into one before, now it's not. Now it's like a 1, 2, 3. It's certified who and what is what. And I think because of how funny Michael Caine is in it, and I don't find it that funny. And I think because the three of them go on the journey together, you've kind of got two people that are being very funny and one not so much for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You mentioned Felicity Shagwell there as well. Apparently, Heather Graham did shoot a scene for this film, which was cut, as did Will Ferrell as well. Mustafa was going to come back. Apparently, there's a scene where someone asks him a question 4 times this time as opposed to 3. So I don't know if those deleted scenes are on the DVD. I don't know if they've been made available or if it's literally just on the cutting room floor. Apparently, the rough cut, once the editor got it in there, was 3 hours long. So somewhere out there, someone's begging for the Jay Roach cut of Austin Powers and Goldmember at a whopping 3 hours. The rest of the cast, then, I'm trying to think of some other characters. Fat Bastard's definitely worth talking about. I think he's brilliant in this one. I love the whole sumo wrestling stuff, the kind of you only live twice kind of section of the film, I guess you can call it. And he gets an arc as well. Like he loses the weight at the end, doesn't he? And he's like, unfortunately, my neck does
Yeah,
look like a vagina. Like is, but the like the Matrix scene with the wire work and I don't know. I love that scene. That's
that
probably
was
my
great.
favorite bit. Yeah.
It's the way he shouts "wire" as well, like you're in on the joke with it, and that's why it made it so much funny. But I think when you've had these characters, this is franchise where it's not about bringing back characters. It's like Mike Myers has a love for these characters,
Mhm.
and Fat Bastard like is one of those. Like he's so like revolting, but you kind of sympathize, and it's the whole piss take that he does sympathize for him. That he has this 180, he has a turnaround, and I think it's just amazing what he can do with him. And even when he's playing like Doctor Evil, I'm not saying his heart's not in it, but I wonder if he has more fun playing other characters, which
Yeah, I think
might
he
be
does,
maybe
doesn't he?
why some other things don't work as well. And I wonder how much that is there. But the Fat Bastard stuff is freaking great. And when he gets the premiere at the end of the film as well, and it is like the redemption arc, isn't it? That they're all there, and I just yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's not gripping me about this. I feel really bad, but I'm not because I did enjoy it. But I think it is that way over time of the first two, then you come back around. But I'm trying to think some other characters that came back. No, let's talk about. Should we very quickly talk about the mini when they're younger?
Yes,
Not mini me,
this
but
yeah, this is probably one of my favorite scenes. As I mentioned, like the casting is just so spot on from everyone. I'm like, I could have gone for a spin-off series with the young cast at like uni. I think that would have been pretty funny. I love the scene where like Doctor Evil's sees that he's number one. He's like, "Hey, I'm number one," and then you go, "Hello, my name is number two." I love that part. I
yeah,
thought that was great. And yeah, they just I don't. I always thought that it was Mike Myers doing the voices and the younger cast was just miming along to it, but I think it's them doing the voices. I think they've just like nailed the impressions. The young Michael York, Basil Exposition, like
yeah.
nailed that Michael York voice. It's probably one of my favorite scenes in the film, I would say.
It's a really fun thing too, and it's quite different that you've had these characters. We've had all this time travel. Why not see them younger? And if the fact is on the joke that Doctor Evil's already bald, he's already pale, he's already got blue eyes. Number two's already got the eye patch. Everyone's already in character, ready for what
Mm,
comes next. And is it spy school or something? Like it's like a spy academy. And
I
I
think
think
so. Yeah.
the whole thing is just a great joke inside stuff, but it's there to also get the plot. Like the fact he's having sex with one of the teachers as well when you're introduced to him. Every character is just set up perfectly from that point onwards, and it's a fun way to spend it. And I'm right with you. I'd have loved to spend more time with them. Like, there's probably loads of adventures, probably of like a young Austin Powers somewhere. But now you've mentioned a 3 hour cut. Not that we need to jump on the Zack Snyder bandwagon, but it is on them saying what jokes never made it out. Did some just not work at all? Because when you get films like this, the SNL types of so much of it's improv, they can probably bin so much of it. But I'd be so curious to see what other things they might have done.
And I guess that takes us on to some favorite scenes as well. Oh God, this is really difficult now to think. I think a lot of my favorite scenes in this are just like really quick aside lines. Like one of my favorite bits, and this does still just does get a laugh out of me because one of my favorite, I say favorite comedians. I've only seen him in like one comedic film, which is Mouse Hunt, which is one of my favorite comedy films. He was the voice of Tim on and in the producers as well, both on stage and the film version, the musical. It's Nathan Lane, and he serves as like the intermediary between it's like when Foxy Cleopatra's trying to remain incognito but pass on information to Austin Powers, this random guy dressed in drag sits down and starts mouthing along identical to what Beyonce's character's saying right behind him. I think it's fantastic. Like even the bit where it completely like blows the realms of reality as well, where he snaps his finger in like a mirror, and like even Beyonce goes like "ow" like behind him, like it's so random and weird, and then he just starts like snogging Austin Powers. I thought that was really funny, and I didn't know for the longest time that that was Nathan Lane. That was like a really late discovery. I think I was like, "What's Nathan Lane doing now?" And like just scrolling down his filmography and like, who was he in Austin Powers? And then I realized it was him. So that scene, the one that I quote all the time, and I still do quote this, it's when Goldmember says like, "Can I paint his Yoo-hoo gold? It's kind of my thing." And then it's like this slow moment where Doctor Evil moves his chair right up close and goes, "How about no, you crazy Dutch bastard?" Like that always gets a laugh out of me. Brilliant. And there's another one that I always quote as well that I thought was a Doctor Evil scene. Oh no, it's the Nigel Powers scene when he first meets Goldmember, and he goes, "There are only two things in this world that I can't stand: people who are intolerant of other people's cultures, and the Dutch." Brilliant. Love it. So
Yeah.
it's mostly small little lines like that, the moments, than like anything big and grandiose in the film. I don't know if I've missed any. How about you?
Um, we spoke about that on the wires. The whole fat bastard. The fact there's a sumo fight. Just think about it. Like Austin Powers went to Japan only to have a sumo fight with fat bastard in it. It
Mhm.
is great. You still get the shaking whenever he hits the floor. So I love the fat bastard stuff. I actually really like the opening bit, and I think because I knew it was a film, I remembered that there was a fake film inside of it at the beginning,
Mhm.
but I'd forgotten, bar Tom Cruise, who the people were in it. And it was really fun getting those little mini revelations. I'm just starting to saying I'd love to see Danny DeVito play Mini Me if there's
Yeah.
another film. I'd
That
pay
was
good
good.
money to watch that. But it's one of them where other favorite scenes. Oh God,
What about the mole scene? I forgot about that one. That's still
see,
pretty good.
I didn't like the mole stuff. And is it the American? It was so repetitive. I think the
Yeah,
first
no.
time I didn't mind it. I think when Doctor Evil was doing it, it's great. But when the others do it, I'm just a little bit like, okay, I've heard this once or twice too many times now. And
Mhm.
again, is that sort of American humor versus the English humor? But I'm think I'm the same. I don't have any specific scenes. I love the whole flashback stuff, but is that a great scene or is it a moment?
Mhm.
And I don't think there's as many sort of 5 minute set pieces where the whole thing's just incredibly
Yeah.
funny from start to end. And this is the thing with comedies because you can have a well good scene, but with a comedy you want it to be funny. You want a comedic scene, and I think there is few and far between of this one. And I think there's a couple of characters that just aren't benefit. I don't think Mini Me is used particularly well in this. There's a couple of great bits when you've got the whole what do they call them? The baby things that they put them in
I
these
was going
days.
to mention, I like the silhouette scene again. They repeat that from the second one, but I do think it's funny in this one when he's like, one of us is going to have to go on the other's shoulders, and then it cuts to he's doing like this weird C3PO kind of walk with Mini-Me on the bottom. I do like the Mini-Me fight actually. That got another laugh out of me. And it's always the ragdoll effect on Mini-Me. It's where he
Yeah.
just punts him and he goes smacking into the fridge. No, I do find that funny. And this is where I have to kind of break it down. Like, as a comedy, does it work? Does it make me laugh? And I'm like, yes, it does. There are a
Yeah.
lot of scenes in the film that do get a smile or a chuckle, or whether I like it out of nostalgia. But there is like some unspoken thing with this film where it's like you can't quite put your finger on why it is, but you know that it's not as good as the other two. And I think you might be right with the like the American sensibility with the humor, probably more so than this one than the previous two. The others I think felt like good kind of send ups and riffs on like that old school James Bond, like the James Bondisms
Yeah.
and everything like that. And this one didn't feel quite as polished in terms of like a pastiche of those earlier ones. And then, yeah, like that music video in the prison, I never liked that. As a kid, I didn't like it. Now I don't like it. It just doesn't land with me. And there's more scenes like that in this film, I think, that don't quite add up for me. I still enjoy it. I still think it's fine. I don't think it's necessarily a bad comedy film, but it is probably significantly the weakest, I think. It's really difficult to know why, isn't it? Because
I
on paper, you're like, it's basically exactly the same as the other two. It's the
yeah.
same characters, it's the same angle towards it, but I think it's just the quality of the writing's not quite as sharp.
Not to look at it in modern day because all that shit wasn't really mean anything, but Doctor Evil. Doctor Evil could have been a character you break out of prison at the end. And I think you could have spent more time with other people. I think we just get a bit too much Doctor Evil when I think this is the film and we need probably less of him until the final part. So we could have got not necessarily more time with Goldmember, but other characters that could have come in and took those places. And I think that's where I struggled with a bit of it, that some of it seemed too forced in what they had to do. But with it being a parody, I guess they kind of have to. So it's a really tricky one. But I think I'm the same as you. There's just I think it works as a comedy. It's still funny, and I think the other two films are just on its own level. That it's hard. I mean, how many great comedy trilogies are there? Really?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd say this is a great comedy trilogy, but there aren't many. And like many great trilogies, there's always one that people will always pick apart, and it tends to usually be the third one.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about like the future of the James Bond, of the Austin Powers franchise as well. And I think, I don't know if it was last week or even the first week, where we kind of went on a big spiel about it, didn't we? This film does end where it could tee up with something, but now it's very difficult. I would say, Doctor Evil turns good at the end. Do you kind of reset the equilibrium and make him evil again, or is he going to be on the good side? Is that going to get in the way of Austin Powers being the lead? If you have Doctor Evil and Austin Powers being the lead two characters, where's the female going to come from? Seth Green would probably be the main villain if they are going to continue that, and of course, we no longer have Vern Troyer with us as well, so there's no Mini-Me. So I don't know. I think the landscape's very different now. I do think there is something there. I think you would have to kind of base it on the Daniel Craig era of Bond. I don't think you could go back to the 60s, 70s kind of style of James Bond, which is inherently what Austin Powers' bread and butter is in terms of its angle of its comedy. But I think you would have to modernize it. But I don't know. Part of me wants one, and that's the nostalgic part of me, but I don't know how well it would work now. I think too many years have gone by. I think they should have jumped on it, years ago, like 2006, 2007 kind of time. That was the prime time to it, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm on with it as well. That I think if this script would work, then there's a chance, but the chance of the script working, I think, is very, very tricky nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with so much time, and also I think you've got to look at the Bond side of it as well. You can't parody the old school Bond after the Craig era because the Craig era has been so successful financially, audience, critically, everything. You would now need to parody the Craig films.
Yeah.
And that parody, I would struggle to see work with Austin Powers. I think he could do it if the script was good enough. That is a very tricky thing to suddenly balance. I mean, they could literally do the ending of it, and I think that would work great for Austin Powers. It'd be so ridiculous, so over the top. But how could you get to that point? And I think that's where they're like that. I think because James Bond is 180. So even Daniel Craig said in the interview, didn't he, that we were watching Austin Powers and we had to make sure we weren't anything like it with Casino Royale. I think when a comedy parody scares a real production, and they are taking into account, that's when you can also judge the success of this trilogy that it had that much of an everlasting imprint on these films. And I would be down for a fourth one. I'd take the risk of seeing it. If it was bad, it would just be another bad comedy, and there's been too many of them. But at the same time, if it was worth it, I bet he's got a script, and I reckon Mike Myers has probably had a script for a very long time. It's probably had his for a very long time, and I feel he's probably tuned us to be all right. We don't have Vern Troyer, and I think he said that in the past that he can't imagine doing Austin Powers about a Mini-Me. That'd be a really weird thing to address off screen. I know we did a Ghostbusters review yesterday, and I guess that does it a bit differently, but there'd be a lot of things for them to take into account, and then I guess you've got to get funding. Would the public turn up? I think they would. I think they would.
Well, we are kind of very much in like a nostalgic generation now, aren't we, for all these kind of things? We've done a lot of 80s stuff, and then this will be kind of moving into the 90s and 2000s. And I guess 20 years is the age that you hit when nostalgia starts to kick in, I suppose. So it'd be very tough. I think you could maybe go with an angle that Austin, like the whole Secret Service has completely changed. It's got a lot more serious now, a lot more high tech, like the Daniel Craig stuff. And then he's kind of, an element of a bygone era, essentially, and he needs to kind of modernize himself. But then if you modernize Austin Powers, that kind of diminishes what Austin Powers is. It's a very tough nut to crack. But, I was going to do like a really bad pun there of never say never, but we're still waiting. I reckon we probably will get something for sure in a few years' time, but there's been no news on it. I remember when this came out, and every shred of news from years later, it was like Mike Myers is in talks to do another Austin Powers film, and 2021, almost in 2022 now, we're still waiting. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think that'll probably do it for our review on Austin Powers and Goldmember. There's not really a whole lot to say. It's very difficult reviewing a comedy film, but that will conclude our trilogy of the Austin Powers films. Obviously, we want to hear from you guys now. Let us know what you think of Austin Powers. Do you like this one? Is it your least favorite? Maybe it's even your favorite? Who knows? Anything Austin Powers related, do let us know. Any favorite scenes, characters, whatnot, please do let us know. And I guess officially, we'll be concluding our epilogue. I guess we've been calling it sort of like the James Bond retrospective that we did, with another spy parody, which actually does have a tie to the James Bond films, with the screenwriters on this one. So next week, that's going to be Tuesday, the 30th of November. We'll be talking about Johnny English. That's going to be the original, the first Johnny English film. We're not going to be talking about Johnny English Reborn, or what was it, Johnny English Strikes Again, or whatever it is. So we're not doing another trilogy review. We are literally just sticking to the first one, the first and best Johnny English film, and that will round us out completely for now with the spy stuff and the James Bond stuff. Yeah, but George, what else do we have coming out? We've got a
Oof.
lot of stuff coming up on the channel.
Yeah, December's going to be a big month, and the biggest release of that, I mean, we've got bloody Kingsman and Matrix, but the big release is, of course, Spider-Man, and we're doing the Spider-Man reviews every Wednesday. We've got a playlist called The Journey to No Way Home. You can find our reviews from the Tom Holland films in there already from earlier this year. We've got the review up for Spider-Man 1, and tomorrow we've dropped the review of Spider-Man 2. We're going to be talking memories of it growing up, thoughts on it now, the last few years, has anything evolved? And also, it's Tobey Maguire, it's Sam Raimi, all that really fun stuff. So if you're a fan of Spider-Man, if you're looking forward to the new film, do join us tomorrow evening as we get that video uploaded onto the channel. And then, of course, we're back every other Wednesday until December the 15th, where we'll be dropping reviews for Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 1, and at some point, not on a Wednesday, Amazing Spider-Man 2 to get that schedule done properly. So there's a lot of Spider-Man stuff coming up, and it's going to be a pretty crazy month if you've been hiding under a rock. Obviously, you won't know how big this film could potentially be, so do join us, and hopefully we get a payoff in December for that. But also, Chris, Spider-Man's not the only big thing coming. What else are we currently covering on the channel?
So we've been going through a Peter Jackson retrospective at the moment. We'll be concluding sort of like his earlier films. I kind of chalk it up to before going into Lord of the Rings month, which is going to be December, with The Frighteners, which is his sort of like horror comedy film. We'll be talking about that this Thursday, the 25th of November. That's going to be 10 p.m. GMT. And that's going to be me and Tate. I'm sure we have a lot to say on that film. Of course, December is going to be Lord of the Rings month. There's going to be a lot more Lord of the Rings content, which I can't wait for. I've been waiting almost, Christ, how long have we been doing this channel? Since we started this channel, I've been waiting to talk about those films, so that'll be fun. And then obviously that's a retrospective that's going to continue into the new year with King Kong, with The Lovely Bones, and maybe that Beatles documentary if I want to watch 6 to 7 hours of the Beatles. Who knows? But we're going to be talking about Peter Jackson's film. So if you're a fan of his films or anything, or if you're curious, do give that a gander as well. That'll do it for right now. Obviously, we're almost at the end of November. Well, we will be from next week, and we've got through it. We've had a lot more content kind of piling up, but December is going to be absolutely stacked. So I'm kind of taking the breath now and mentally preparing myself for the month of December. Obviously, socials going across the bottom of the screen right now. That's exactly where you can find us. Twitter at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterbox.com/cinemasavvy, where you can stay up to date with all of the content that we've got coming out, times that we're going to be going live, and other videos in between. That'll do it for us for right now. Until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.